So this upcoming weekend, WWE WrestlePalooza, and as part of this segment, we'll try to tie in AEW All Out as well into it. But obviously, WrestlePalooza is the forefront and how essentially AEW All Out has to go in with this event, even though it was the first one that was announced between the two. But WrestlePalooza here is more than just the usual PLE we talk about on the program, right? This is their foray into ESPN's direct-to-consumer $30 app, which so far what I've seen, I've never seen so many people speaking out about how they're not going to be watching it that way. It's also obviously WWE's foray into that app and foray into ESPN. So they're trying to make it as WrestleMania-esque as they can. There's supposed to be like 5 hours of pre-show on a bunch of different platforms. They're advertising it obviously on ESPN. They're doing all sorts of stuff to really get it out there. One thing I've kind of noticed, which I think is incredibly strange. Brandon, maybe you notice this, obviously, as somebody who has been watching WWE on different platforms like Netflix and stuff lately. But WWE was always on something else internationally outside of Peacock, but they never literally ever said it. They were always like, only on Peacock, or even before that, only on WWE Network, right? Even though there was the other options, you never even saw it like on the poster for the show or anything like that. But weirdly enough, when they're trying to get all these people in the United States to watch this only on ESPN, I feel like the also on Netflix internationally, like on the poster, on the graphics, is getting equal billing. And I think that's kind of strange because, again, even when it was on Netflix before, right, that you would always hear Michael Cole just say, only on Peacock this upcoming Sunday or Saturday or whatever. Only on Peacock can you watch WrestleMania, but literally as they're advertising this, it's like I said, getting equal billing. It's like on the
they're
ESPN.
acknowledging that people aren't going to use ESPN in the States. Let's be honest. That's what they're
acknowledging it, which is just, I guess, strange because again, I feel like in a sense of where you have to push more than ever because, like I said, so many people are pushing back. So it's just strange that ESPN has paid the most amount of money they've ever received to get the PLEs, right? So they've got to essentially in the best good faith. But so far, WWE has been like not as good as they were about it in previous terms with Peacock because again, you got Stephanie McMahon talking about VPNs. You got Netflix getting the equal billing. And I understand, like I said, but just the idea that you're telling people who are in the United States who maybe don't even know because they don't know what goes on. They thought in Italy they were watching on Peacock the whole time, and now they're whether they're in bed and understand about VPNs or now being like, well, wait a minute, they get to watch it elsewhere a different way. Well, if there's a different way, maybe I'm going to start looking about different ways, and I think that's essentially not probably what ESPN wants with all the money that they're paying to have the Netflix logo beside their logo on anything. Yeah. But, I guess my question is with WrestlePalooza, what do you think? Is this going to be a massive success for ESPN and WWE, or is ESPN going to have some buyer's remorse?
I think it's going to be very successful. I think WWE it's never been this hot. Like honestly, it's on fire right now. Let's be honest. I mean, looking at the card itself, when you're headlining it with John Cena and Brock Lesnar, which are two obviously household names, and, you could sell everything else on like the CM Punk, AJ Lee versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. You could also say, hey, the Usos haven't tagged up in a few years. That's going to be must-see TV. So they're checking all these boxes, and I think it's because the product is so hot right now. I think ESPN is going to make their money and some and be very happy with it.
Okay, because, again, it's $30, for an account, right? So 30, and what are they paying? I think it's in the upwards of like 10 to 30 million, if I'm not mistaken, per event to have these events. So getting that, we've talked about it already kind of like a little bit of nauseum about the uptick that they would need, how many subscribers. We talked about back in the WWE Network days about how many subscribers you need to equal the money that you made before on traditional pay-per-view. So how many subscribers you need to essentially equal like additional subscribers, because there's people out there who are going to get ESPN stuff who aren't wrestling fans. So you got to look at the people like myself who are only going to get it for this. But I feel like I've never heard more backlash about something before. Like I've never, obviously, I don't want people to be so loud about it, but I've never heard so many people talking about different and alternative ways to watch WWE before in my life. I feel like I'm hearing it like on talk radio. I'm hearing it on different podcasts where people are like saying, hey, it's not that I'm not going to consume the product, but I'm not going to get ESPN this month. I can tell you from a personal perspective, and I don't know about the long term, but I don't foresee myself. I'm definitely not getting it for this weekend's event. Well, one, because I'll be in a area where I don't need a VPN. I'll be in an area where Netflix is the home of the PLE this upcoming weekend. So I'll be there if I have to watch it. Also be at a time where unfortunately I won't be able to get to watch it live. I got some major life things going on in my life this weekend that will make
Just
it
a
so
little
that I
bit,
won't
just
be
a little bit. Yeah.
just a little bit, so I won't be watching it live. But the weird thing is, and we've talked about this before, I actually, in an alternate universe, wouldn't be watching this live either, because we live very close to Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where I just was this past weekend. So I saw all the billboards and advertisements for it. But talking similar to like the Saudi Arabia situation and how like if AEW hosts an event, who's going to go there, and eyeballs and ticket sales and things like that. But I would have and made the plan to go to AEW All Out to again physically see wrestling in person versus on television, because again, I can always see it on television. I'm not saying I won't watch WrestlePalooza. I definitely will at some point. But if I had a absolutely free Saturday to do with what I want and to go anywhere I can, I would be physically driving myself to AEW's All Out event in Toronto versus watching, just sitting home and waiting for WrestlePalooza. And AEW is going to be on in the afternoon. I don't live, in Toronto, so I wouldn't just be able to walk out of one and into, watch home to watch it. So I'd be driving home, I guess, during the WrestlePalooza time. But I'm very curious. This is a big event. They're putting on, all the marquee matches for ESPN, but the thing is, they all won't be like this, right? Like with Netflix, we learned with the big Monday Night Raw that had The Rock and Undertaker and all that. That's not what Raw looks like on a week-to-week basis.
No.
And when Crown Jewel comes around in just about 3 weeks and it's on at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily going to look like this event exactly. I understand you want to go out the best foot forward here, with this. So, good on WWE to essentially make this like a quote unquote WrestleMania. Tickets aren't necessarily sold out, but at the end of the day, I think, it will be enough in that perspective to make their money.
It'll be a good house. It'll be a good house.
Yes. With only like a month notice. But I will say, a lot of people saying it's like a WrestleMania card. I will say it's WrestleMania-ish because I don't necessarily see the stories behind. A lot of people say these are a lot of great stories, and I think the best story is the Seth Rollins because that's been building for a while. But the John Cena, Brock Lesnar stuff, that's obviously kind of thrown together a little more last minute.
Well, I'll counter that though. I'm going to counter that because there's been a long-standing rivalry between these two guys for over 20 years. So I think
you're correct. I guess
Yeah, that's how I would play it, and I think that's how WWE's playing it. You're right to that one aspect where it kind of was thrown together. But in this case, you can kind of get away with it because of the long-standing history, back in the early 2000s, 20 years ago, all that stuff. So I think we can get away with that part of it.
I hear what you're saying. Definitely. I mean, there was that rumor all along that Brock Lesnar and John Cena were going to have a match if Brock Lesnar was able to come back, that kind of thing. So I definitely agree with that. But this particular story, right, kind of thrown together. And we got the women's championship match, and we're supposed to have a clash in Paris. It's going to be on this event right here instead. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a good event overall. I guess my question is, we'll start with maybe some of the wins and the losses. I'll tell you one matchup was definitely thrown together. Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre. There was rumors that match was definitely going to happen at some point, but obviously thrown together as in Cody just takes a red eye from Australia, filming Street Fighter, to show up on SmackDown and just make this match overnight to show all hands on deck. But quickly, before we talk about wins and losses, I will ask you, do you feel, I know the card's big, does this feel like WrestleMania though?
I mean, you just said it. The card's pretty big. And to me, like, minus maybe like the big celebrities and all that stuff, which I'm sure we're going to get. I don't be surprised. I feel like they're going to show like the Pat McAfee's of the world. There's going to be celebrities there.
It's in an arena, it's not a Lucas Oil Stadium. So obviously, they can only go so far. I imagine there will be pyro at this show. And I'm hoping, hey, maybe they're going to be having a pretty sweet looking set,
To answer that question, though, I do think it will have that WrestleMania feel because I do think there's going to be the celebrities. I don't know, maybe involved, but they'll be there. The match card itself it's fantastic. I think they're pulling out all the stops for this, and I think ESPN is going to be very happy with the return on their investment, not just going forward, but just as the starting point. This is good. I mean, every match on here has main event quality written all over it.
I think you know what it feels like to me? It doesn't have WrestleMania feel to me. What it feels like to me is it feels exactly like the pay-per-views from Saudi Arabia when WWE's things first started, where all of a sudden you're getting these super cards out of nowhere because that's what they're paying for, right? You're getting the greatest Royal Rumble with no build. You're getting Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns in a cage match. You're getting The Undertaker teaming up with Kane to take on the brothers, Goldberg coming back. So like these super cards, WrestleMania obviously I feel is more than just the card. We've said that that's kind of one of the principles of our podcast. It's not just the best wrestling matches. It's not Kenny Omega and Okada in a 5-star match. That's not WrestleMania. It's a lot more than that. It's a mixture of 1,000 different things.
Common circumstance.
Yes, it's all those incumbents. So this doesn't have, to me, a WrestleMania feel. It has more of that early Saudi Arabia pay-per-view super card kind of like, what are the best matches we can make?
I don't see it that way because it's not like they're calling Undertaker out of retirement. They're not calling.
No, they're not. It is. I will say it's better than that because we're using some active people. But again, this pay-per-view was announced right around the SummerSlam time. I think after SummerSlam already happened. I mean, this is all 1 month.
How quickly this has been brought together, though. I think WWE's done a good job putting this together. They put a good card together. I'm sure there's going to be some tricks up their sleeve to make this really good, especially for the ESPN debut. So I bet you by the time we talk about this afterwards next week, I think we might have a different conversation where we're going to be like, yeah, this is kind of like a WrestleMania. It's
going to feel a lot like the Netflix debut, I think, in the sense of they're going to do a lot of that terminology like they're talking to a new audience. But when it comes to John Cena and Brock Lesnar, let's quickly talk about some matches real quick before all the other schematics. John Cena, Brock Lesnar. You think John Cena is going over in this? Does he need to go over in this? I think he shouldn't because, again, this is his last year, and Brock Lesnar might have some more matches in him. I think we've already seen Brock Lesnar take the fall too much in a lot of this. I don't think it looks great on him, but who do you see winning this match, John Cena or Brock Lesnar?
I think John Cena's winning this match.
Is it because it's on ESPN and they want to give everybody the hurrah, hurrah?
Yeah, you stole my thunder. That's exactly what I was going to say because, when you have ESPN and WWE working together like this, you want the fans, you want the network to go home with the rah-rah kind of thing. And what better way to do that than have John Cena walk away as the winner?
But I think the fans are going to go home with all of that happiness with what I think will be the main event, and that is CM Punk and AJ Styles up against, and I think it's already been announced that John Cena and Brock Lesnar are the main event. Joe Tessitore said that. But what I think should have been the main event, but I think is probably the best build on this whole card is, the Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch versus AJ Lee and CM Punk. This is going to be exciting. I'm excited to see what AJ Lee has in her tank 10 years after the fact. Now, again, not being the main event, do you see maybe the heels going over in this match?
Honestly, I think CM Punk and AJ Lee are going to win this match. I think this is going to be they're going to start the show with this match.
Okay. So we got that. All right. So you got to give us the heels somewhere. Okay. The Usos, right? Jey Uso, kind of a heelish as of late, right? With his whole situation with LA Knight, and LA Knight obviously getting his revenge on Monday Night Raw this past week. And that kind of build up that they're going to have against themselves probably going forward. But the Usos teaming back up the greatest WWE tag team of all time, arguably against the Vision, Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. Faces or heels? Who's winning?
Heels are winning this one. I think the Vision's going to go over on this one. Yeah, I mean, you can't obviously have all faces win, but I think they're going to start the night with good faith with the CM Punk AJ Lee victory. And I think they're going to end the night with John Cena going over on Brock Lesnar. And then in the kind of in the middle of that sandwich, so to speak, I do think the Vision will win the match itself as the heels.
I think Io Sky. I guess my thing is I have Io Sky and Stephanie Vaquer for the vacant women's championship that Naomi had. I obviously know that Io Sky and Rhea Ripley are going to square off against each other at some point, but Crown Jewel is champion versus champion. If obviously I remember right, regardless of if it's in Saudi Arabia, I still think the principle stands where it's non-title matches. It's champion versus champion to determine who the Crown Jewel champion is. And I'm going to say that it's who do you see going up against Tiffany Stratton at Crown Jewel? That's who's going to win this. Who do you see?
I think Stephanie Vaquer. I really think she's going to win. I think something's going to happen where there's going to be a downfall with Io Sky and Asuka because obviously there's building something there. So what better way to kind of transition towards that to put the belt on Stephanie and then have Io and Asuka have an issue and have a future match.
And then we got the championship match that was, like I said, if this was not this ESPN thing, I think they would have kept this off. They would have said we got enough star power on this, like they did, Backlash or Money in the Bank, where we haven't had the championship always on the line, or you know what I mean? Like we haven't had Gunther on every card back in the day when he was champion. But this is not one of those events. You got to throw this guy out here. You got to do it. Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre. Again, this isn't going to main event anything. It's kind of thrown together last minute. Drew McIntyre taking another fall. Obviously, his whole situation where he lost the championship many times was his rivalry with CM Punk. That rivalry's over with. Right now, it's Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre without any outside. Or do you see some sort of outside costing somebody here?
No, I think Cody Rhodes is going to win this match. I mean, it's really been no build. I mean, if you're going to build up, someone taking the title off Cody Rhodes, then you would have done that. This is a no build kind of situation. So to me, you're just going to keep the title on Cody and move on.
I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to say this. I think, again, could be wrong most of the time because it's like 90% of the time that these are very predictable events, right? It's like picking the Washington Generals over the Harlem Globetrotters. They got to win sometime. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think Drew McIntyre is winning the belt. One, because, again, Cody Rhodes doing the movie thing kind of, has stepped away a little bit, you know what I mean? And he's got to be on this card because he's the face of the company. But, again, I see Drew McIntyre because I think the idea is here you want to give people the surprise because this is an idea of getting new fans on the product. And you want to see the faces win, you want to see the heels win, and you want to see them wanting something that's going to make it so they tune in. You got to leave them wanting more. You got to surprise them. You got to have that Money in the Bank cash in. You got to have that, wait, what is that? I didn't see that coming kind of thing to make them, like a soap opera, have to tune in tomorrow to see what's going on with this. And I think Drew McIntyre would be a great example. Back in the day, like the Jinder Mahal, when he surprisingly beat Randy Orton for the belt. Drew McIntyre winning the belt. No one's going to see it coming. Everything else is going to be predictable. You're going to get your good guys winning where you see your good guys winning. But this is going to kind of catch people off guard. You're going to have to, and that's the thing too, you got to, the people who are maybe never been WWE fans or are watching it as a return, you can't just say these four guys like Hulk Hogan and such are going to be the ones you just watch all the time. You got to build new stars. And how did you get Gunther to be at WrestleMania? You give him the belt, right? That's what these belts are. They're props to get you interested in other people. Triple H in 1999 was a perfect champion because you had Undertaker, you had Stone Cold, you had Mick Foley, you had The Rock. How are you, though, going to get somebody interested in, like, Triple H? He's a champion of the company, so he's got to essentially get involved in a lot of this, right? Because he's not John Cena. So I think Drew McIntyre, to find his way as the outsider looking in, he's the champion. I think that's what we kind of saw, like I said, recently, right? With the Gunthers of the world, right? As holding the world title. With the Io Sky at WrestleMania, right? Bianca and Rhea, they're the two faces going after each other. But Io is like, hey, but I'm the champion. And that's how she slides in there, right? And that's how we learn about Io. And we know more about Io when these two major faces, the big names of the company are facing off against each other. So I'm going to go on a limb and say Drew McIntyre wins this match. He becomes the new undisputed WWE champion. I know it's crazy to think. But I think that is, and it's not how the show is going to go off the air. But I think that's kind of a swerve here, at the end of the day. But
so it's okay to go out on a limb. I went on a limb this past weekend with Dominic Mysterio winning the championship in AAA, and that kind of worked out. So
and he did, and I have to say, not to go about the Saudi Arabia thing, but that is where some of that stuff kind of sucks because at the end of the day, some of these places are putting on good shows, and I think obviously to not go off of WrestlePalooza, but that AAA and WWE Worlds Collide event last week was great. Yeah. I liked it. Great matches. Right, and it
a lot of fun.
It stinks that it's to come off of the day where everyone's like, a little upset with WWE, for reasons, and they put the graphic up on the screen during that PLE late at night, and it got booed out of the building, which was great to see. But an event, a great event. Dominic Mysterio winning the championship, but overall great event, and that's why we watch wrestling for events like that because it was a good time. Anything quickly before we talk the finale of WrestlePalooza, anything over on the alternative side of things in the afternoon, which is weird to say,
Yeah.
in the afternoon that you're interested in seeing for AEW All Out? I think the main event should be Adam Copeland and Christian Cage from a symbolic standpoint against FTR. I'm interested in seeing John Moxley and Darby Allin in a coffin match. As we know, John Moxley is not going to take any time off. MJF and Mark Briscoe in a tables and tacks match is just like weird in the sense of being very specific about weapons you could use. And obviously, the main event championship, Adam Page and Kyle Fletcher. With one other weird thing to add, I will say Eddie Kingston returning to wrestling and AEW having been gone for a little while, making his return. But any of those things you're looking forward to, you want to watch, whether it's live or on delay, that you're saying, I want to make sure I catch that this weekend.
Yeah, there's one match in particular, Hangman, Adam Page, and Kyle Fletcher, like that. That to me is the match that I'll do what I can to. I don't know if I'll watch it live, but I will watch it. Between now and when we talk about it. So that's something I'm looking forward to. Those guys are going to put on a good show, and Don Callis' family is banned from ringside for the match as well. Another little stipulation there, and in that match, I still think Hangman's going to win, but I think there's going to be a lot of false finishes.
I can tell you just as a personal perspective, in case anybody's out there, you're wondering about what day that the AEW crew kind of travels. Saturdays are the day that they travel. This was the second time that I came across the AEW production trucks in my personal life. I remember one time I was driving down to New York City. It was after the Grand Slam week, and they were, I think, heading up to, might have been Toronto, I think at the time, for like Dynamite that week. And I saw the trucks passing me on the highway going the other direction. This past week on my way to Toronto, I made a stop off in Rochester, New York, which is too far from us. Saw all on a Saturday. I saw all the AEW trucks all parked and getting on the road and heading up north to Toronto on the New York State Thruway. So Saturday is the day. If you're looking to catch, if you're going from where AEW was to where AEW is going to be, that's the day that I think that they seem to be getting to the next city. Dynamite this week is actually from London, Ontario for a 3-hour Dynamite. That's just their vibe there. I don't know why they need to put on a 3-hour Dynamite right before they're about to put on a 9-hour pay-per-view. That's what they do over there. Yeah. But the final thing about WrestlePalooza, I want to ask you, and this is how we'll finish out this week's show. WrestlePalooza, the ESPN app, $30 a month. Obviously, the idea is to get all this mainstream publicity, get some people, on ESPN SportsCenter who don't care about wrestling to put it out there and to talk about it. The same idea as Netflix. Does this create new fans? Will people be watching WrestlePalooza like similar to Netflix, similar to the Unreal documentary? Obviously, this is WWE's spiel every time they try to sell this stuff to somewhere new. Again, will this make wrestling fans out of people who aren't wrestling fans? Will people be watching this who wouldn't have watched it otherwise?
I would say yes and yes, but not to the extent where it's going to be a mind-blowing, like drastic change overnight where we're going to see massive numbers pop up. I do think there's going to be a little bit of both, where you're going to see some new fans and new members of the WWE universe, but I think it'll be so minimal that you're not going to really see the impact to it. So I think it's kind of going to be plateaued, honestly.
And do you think this will, do you think it'll impact them going forward? Meaning Crown Jewel is coming up next month. It's in Australia. It's at 5:00 in the morning or whatever. Do you think more people will be watching that Crown Jewel based on, this going forward? Or do you think it's like the Netflix thing, which we mostly saw, and that it fell right back down to just the wrestling fans who were going to watch it before?
Yeah, that's exactly where it's going to be. I think it's. Okay. I think there might be like a spike for the interest part, and then we might grab a few people, which is cool. But I think
it always does. I mean, the XFL had like close. Not I want to say Super Bowl, but like NFL playoff rating numbers on week 1. And then obviously, as we know, as history told us back in 2001, that dipped right off. I don't think it's going to be that drastic.
I was going to say, I don't think it's going to be that drastic.
I don't think it's going to be that drastic because I don't think it's going to be that high. Like XFL went so high that they had only to go down. Obviously, I don't
think of it as like something like a stock where it like pops up for like a quick second, then it comes back to normal Earth. That's what I think it's going to be.